So it's 5:32. I'm going to open the meeting. And let me just get to my agenda here. Where am I? Okay. So I'll call the meeting to order. And so we'll start with the consent agenda. And we'll start with the previous minutes. So if anybody has any questions or wants to have a discussion, and if not, then I would entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mort made the motion. So I'm going to take a vote by roll. So I'll start with Mort.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
And I am an aye. Did you say we had one more?
Just the four of you.
Just the four. Okay, so moved. So that brings us to the second reading of the policies. We have tobacco prohibition policy, English learners, curriculum development and coordination, educational support system, and special education, which is a new policy. And so if anybody has any discussion or questions, I would entertain those. And if not, I would entertain a motion. I believe all of the changes were highlighted in red, which I have to say is super helpful when you're reading through it. So I would, if anybody doesn't have questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion to accept all of the second readings.
I'll make the motion to accept.
Okay. So having no discussion, Amy made the motion to accept. So I'll take a roll. Sarah.
Aye.
Mort.
Aye.
Amy.
Aye.
And I am an aye. Okay, so that brings us to agenda preview and prioritization. Lynn, how do we need to reorganize, or are we set with the agenda?
I think we are good as it's written.
Okay. So next we have the recognition of visitors, public comment, which is exactly that. It's a time for the public to comment. So the board does not respond. We just sit and listen. Is there anybody in the meeting that is a member of the public, Morgan?
So there's nobody in person at the emergency services building.
Okay.
We've got a handful of names that I don't recognize on the Zoom.
Okay.
So I think if anyone is interested in participating in the public comment, they could either go on mic and say yes or raise their hand and we'll get a count. It may be that they're all here for the spotlight. I don't know.
Okay. So is there any member of the public that would like to speak at this time? Okay.
Doesn't look
So
like
I
it.
guess, okay, great. Well, welcome anybody who's in watching the meeting. So we'll just continue. So we will continue on to the school spotlight, which looks like it is Joseph with Enosburg High School.
Yes. Well, I was trying to decide which programs that I wanted to highlight, and there were actually two that I would like to bring forward tonight for your attention and also your entertainment. So there has been a group of student athletes who have formed around becoming school ambassadors to help create a healthy and safe, tolerant, respectful school climate environment. And I want to be clear that this is not just on the heels of what happened in social media around the problems with racial slurring and stuff like that, but it's clearly these students took those matters to heart, and they wanted to address anything in our community that was getting in the way of having a healthy, safe, tolerant, respectful community. So we have been working with a consultant, John Kidda, who's pretty much an expert in restorative practices. And he and I and Tim Trevithick, along with Michelle Irish and Anthony Sorrentino, our AD, have been working prior to the holidays and again after the holidays on this effort. We'll continue working on it through the spring. So I have 3 students who are here tonight. I think they raised their hands to volunteer for this, and they have some things they'd like to share with you. So it's Foster Hutchins, Emily Adams, and Danny Antion. And I believe I've seen all 3 of you on the call. So I'll turn this over to you folks.
So we just want to start by saying, hope you guys are all having a good night. Bit chilly today, but hopefully we all stayed warm. And I believe Emily is going to lead us with the opening of our slideshow. I wish we could present it. I'm not sure there's a way.
I think we can. If you press share content and then just go to the slides, I think they can see it, right?
Yeah, I just need to open that up for you. Hold on one second.
This is a perfect example of how my students are my best teachers.
There, you should be able to
I'm-
share now.
Yeah.
Okay, you just hold on. Sorry, yeah.
Here, let me try.
All right, yeah, Danny, if you could please.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
We can.
Okay. Cool. I just need to click to present, I think.
Our main agenda for this slideshow is to present it to the athletic student body. So like any of the students who are wanting to play sport. And so the first slide here is, Danny?
Sorry. Tell me when to say.
No, stop there. All right. So our first slide is trying to engage and let the students understand why we're doing this. And we're doing this to emphasize like teamwork, community building, work ethic, common goals. And we started with a quote to try and engage them into what we're doing. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And our main focus is this pyramid. This pyramid is basically 3 tiers. The bottom is creating healthy relationships, creating norms, so getting the teams together like on the same page of what their goals in the season are. The second one is finding a way to, when there's struggle or harm on the team, finding a way to find that harm and fixing it. But also the next year, not only making them responsible for the consequences, but bringing them back into the team and reintegrating them back into the community and building that strong relationship. And that's basically what the pyramid is. Okay, next one. So our plan of action is for the captains or team leaders at the beginning of the season created to decide on an activity for the team to do together. This will build a relationship. The students and athletes can get together outside of just the sport and get to know each other on like a personal level, and then to create norms of the team and to make goals of what they want to happen for the season. Okay, you're good. I'm good.
All right, so we want to start with the tier 1. And the main thing we want is obviously to develop the healthy relationships between the team. The closer the team is, more of a community they are, and that's what we're striving for. So with the norms that the team gets together and decides, we want to just have, like, especially if there's captains of the team or the leaders of the teams, we want them to get together and really focus on striving to make the team close. Closer the team, like I said, just the better off they will be. And some examples we thought of to bring the team closer to each other would just be some pickup games, even volunteering out to help the community. I know the basketball team has already participated in that. Getting toys, I forget what it's called, the organization, but it was nice of them, and it's just getting the team together. And the last would be like my favorite. We did it for soccer season, a team dinner before a game. It helps keep everybody close, everybody invited, just keeping them close together. Could you go to the next slide, Danny, please? Thank you. So if there is somebody on the team that breaks the norms of what they've decided, we would ask for the captains to come together, especially with the head coach or assistant coach, whatever. And if necessary, we'd bring in the AD, and of course the principals would be a part. I think that'd be for a bigger offense. But they would get together and meet, and they would just identify like what's going on and what they should do to help this person, and just make a plan so they can push past it and they can learn from their mistakes and have the second opportunity to like prove themselves and be a part of the team again. And then I think Danny will take over from here.
Yeah, so just like the end results, in the end, we want to hold our teams to a higher level, to have everyone strive towards success. We have to hold our players to the idea of representation, and we want to exemplify respect, kindness, and hard work. We want to show the public what EFHS is all about. And we have this nice graphic from one of our classmates, but so yeah, do we have any questions, I guess?
No.
I have one question. So this kind of training, are first the captains getting trained and then bringing that to the team, or is the whole team getting the training?
So like, oh yeah, you can go faster, sure.
So our main objective is to hopefully get this slideshow out to the student athletes of the school, whether that's bring them into the auditorium and go through the same thing we're going through right now. We want everybody aware of it, but we would really like the captains, because they are captain of the team, to take initiative and get this through to everyone. So yeah, we would expect the captains to really push this.
Yeah, I love this. This is, I mean, when you think about what true leadership means, this is one is making sure your group works together and you have a relationship and you support each other and you're better as a whole, instead of the individual. So I love this. This is great.
What I like about, I was going to say one thing, that the membership in the cohort of students, athletes who have been taking part in this represent fall, winter, and spring sports, boys and girls. So it's a real diverse representation. And these three folks here and others who've joined in the training and other folks, they are the ambassadors, and they want to bring this message in a grassroots way to the entire school. It's not just about sports, but they have taken some extra responsibility in moving this effort forward. Lynn, did you want to say something?
Yeah, first, I just wanted to thank the students for coming and sharing this with us. I'm really pleased to see this work. And I think, if memory serves, I think the three students who are presenting tonight might all be seniors. Is that true?
I'm a junior, but
Danny is a senior, yeah.
Okay, so that was part of my question, just in terms of sustaining the momentum of this. And Joseph, you answered that a little bit, just about the process and who's been involved. So I'm so pleased to see the student voice and the leadership in this. And I wondered if you could talk through your plan for this year and how you sustain something like this into years beyond this first year.
I know that since we're already into the winter sports season, it's going to be hard to try to implement that right now, but we're really aiming towards the spring sports like baseball, softball. I know there's other sports as well. So that's our main goal. We really want to finalize a good idea and just get this implemented into our sports as soon as possible, because I think sports play a big part in the school. So if we can get it to the athletes, they can continue that to the rest of the students in everyday life when we're at school. So that's our main goal.
I think we also
You can go.
okay. I think we also like do some of the stuff already, like how Foster said with the team dinners and soccer. But it's just like this planning is to take it to another level, make sure that we have that triangle that we showed you of just making everything fit. But some of the stuff that we showed is already like kind of implemented, I guess.
Yeah, and we also have there's other students involved in this. We're just the ones presenting the slideshow. So there was like another group with softball, and there was more younger classmen. So they also play more sports. So I feel like once we like get it implemented in baseball and softball, a lot of athletes play multiple sports, so they could help it for next year get back into it. And I feel like agreeing with Danny, we do most of the first and second tiers well. The main new thing is the top one, which is the reintegration, which is just bringing in athletes like back in together after something has happened. So I feel like with all the athletes, once we get it in to one sport, it could be easily translated to all of them.
One
Great.
nice feature about this has been that coaches and staff administrators are working side by side, experiencing the whole restorative process. It's as though the hierarchy kind of goes away. It's human beings working together as we learn to build a culture of respect and tolerance and safety on all levels. So as they said, there's two seniors tonight. We certainly have been very active, but Danny's a junior and there are other underclassmen who will pass this legacy on to the rest of the student body, and it will grow because the whole school is behind it. So I want to thank you, all three of you, for showing up tonight on this cold winter Vermont night and presenting to us. Great job.
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity. And, I don't know, believing in us as students to be able to carry on what your plans are, and we agree with it. So that's what we want to do.
Yeah, we
Thanks
appreciate
for joining us, especially
Yeah.
on a snow day. Thanks for
Really.
jumping on anyway.
Yes.
So I've asked the groups to be brief, and Lynn, you know I love to talk, or is that new to you?
Yeah.
So I have two of our faculty members and two of our students who are in the digital media class. So Cynthia Holt and Anna Wadlington have a brief presentation they'd like to share, and that kind of closes the spotlight. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Hello, thanks for having us. Anna and I are co-teaching a mass media and communications class this year. It counts as one English credit and one social studies credit because it is a year-long course. It's been a lot of fun. Our first semester, we really focused on having students learn about the history of communication, and we personalized it by giving them choice boards and letting them have a lot of options as far as the type of media they consumed, whether it was documentaries or podcasts or newspaper articles. And then they really practiced kind of those digital media skills that they need in order to make presentations and videos and photo stories. The culmination, I guess, of our semester has been the Spring Fling video that the guidance department has asked us to create for incoming freshmen. And so the students that we have with us tonight, Chloe and Hayden, I have their videos to show you, but we asked them to kind of speak on what they've learned in the class and what they're working on presently and kind of their hopes for the class in the future.
Cynthia, you could add a little bit, I think, right at the end. But Hayden and Chloe, if you want to share just kind of what you've worked on and what you've learned and what you found valuable and what you're looking forward to in the second semester. After that, we can share the Spring Fling website and your videos that are wonderful and amazing.
Yeah, so I joined the class a little bit late, so I didn't get to experience some of the really fun stuff that went on, but I've learned a lot so far. It's been difficult since COVID, trying to stay connected with our community, and I think this class has been really great to kind of learn more about our students and faculty. I've done a lot of interviewing, and I've talked to a lot of students, and it's been a really good experience, and I'm excited to share more with the community in the upcoming semester.
Thanks, Chloe. Hayden, I'm not sure what your connection is like, but do you want to share anything, or would you like us to share the school website right now? All right, I am not sure if Hayden can hear, but as Cynthia said, we have a link to the Spring Fling website with some of the videos. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure how to share my screen right now. I don't know
At the
if I
bottom,
have
if you
that
click on the,
ability.
Anna, if you click on the share screen at the bottom,
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah, so this is what we have so far for the Spring Fling website. So the idea is that I'm going to turn off my video because my internet connection is not super stable. But this is what we would share to potential incoming 8th graders to show them different opportunities at Enosburg and get more comfortable with knowing who some of the student body might be, who some of the teachers are, and other adults at the school, because that's one of the most important things. So we have the different videos that all of the students have made for their final end of semester project on this first home page, and we'll keep populating it with them as they come in. And then we will have another tab that people can go to see different interviews that our current students have done with teachers and staff at Enosburg, specifically with teachers who typically teach 9th grade classes. So I also teach 9th grade social studies, so I'll have an interview on that page, and Erin Kusan with science, her video will be there.
And Anna, if you want to show one of the videos, Chloe's is the first one on the
right
row.
here.
No, the first underneath it on the row of 2. Yeah, the one with
Danny
Danny.
right
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll play this one right now. I'm hoping that my internet lets it.
extremely diverse,
loving, creative,
supportive, and independent.
So yeah, that was Chloe's video that she made. And a lot of the other ones are just as wonderful and highlight a bunch of different people and opportunities. And I think that's it. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or anything we can clarify or anything you're curious about for Cynthia or I or Chloe or Hayden if he's here.
No, that was great. You really did like capture the whole depth of what it means to go to Enosburg and why people should go. That's great. I like it.
Thank you, Anna and Cynthia and Hayden and Chloe also for coming out tonight and sharing. I think it's exciting, and for kids who are trying to make a decision from our choice towns about which high school they're going to go to, or any choice towns, this is a good representation and a good resource for them to use right on the website. So some great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you guys for all the good work you're doing and for showing up tonight. It means a lot.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, thanks for having us.
Thanks again. Okay, we are going to move on to the next part of the agenda. And that brings us to Morgan.
Thanks. This will, I'll try to get through some of the stuff as quickly as possible, and I'm going to be doing a lot of bouncing back and forth on screen sharing. For starters, you've got my monthly report. There's no draft of the audit yet, so I'm happy to answer any questions on the monthly report if you've got them, and I'm certainly happy to answer them offline if that's better. And then in terms of deadlines for budget development, for folks who are running for school board, petitions are due January 24th, and they go to Billy Joe, who's the Enosburg town clerk. She's also your district clerk. If you want to, you can get them to her via me. Just plan on getting them to me the week before so I can get them over to her. And at this point, you will need that petition to have your name appear on a ballot. We are bumping up against some deadlines in terms of warning your budget, and so I will go through those as we go through the different budget attachments that were in your packet. But are there any general questions on the schedule or timeline? Okay. I think what I will do first is pull up a copy of your warning and just tip you to the conversation that we're going to need to have at some point this meeting. So on your screen, you should see a copy of the warning with yellow and pink highlight. The Senate last week passed, and the House also passed S-172, which gives you similar authority to what you had last year to have an all Australian ballot town meeting day meeting. And if you were to do that, we would need to have a Zoom informational meeting, but that wouldn't necessarily need to have a public component. In a normal year, you have a physical town meeting where we elect your district clerk and your treasurer and your moderator, and there's a few articles that we pass every year, but really the budget vote and the board seat votes are going to be on town meeting day no matter what you decide to do. If you do want to have an in-person meeting, that would be on Thursday, February 17th, 2022, and we would just have to include that in the warning. The challenge with that is, as I understand it, there's no way to have an annual meeting that is hybrid, similar to the way that we're holding these regular board meetings. Because of the nature of the voting, because you might have ballot votes for those positions that are normally done from the floor. There's no real way to manage a vote that's hybrid. So having people both vote in the room and people vote on Zoom. And so I would imagine that you could project your meeting somehow to a YouTube channel, but you really wouldn't have any participation from people online the way that you do at this meeting. As I said, the House and the Senate passed that bill. It left the State House on, I think it was Friday. It was sent to the governor's office today. He is expected to sign it. And so I think that we can comfortably move forward tonight, either by warning an in-person meeting as you did 2 years ago, or warning a virtual Australian ballot meeting as you did last year. And I've got some language from the lawyer on what you would need to do that. But that's going to be one of the decision points that we need to make tonight. If you do still want to have it in person, we have to get something off to the newspapers basically by tomorrow to warn that February 17th meeting. If you do it Australian ballot, you are required to have your informational meeting no greater than 10 days before. So we have an extra week to get that one warned if we go that route. So for starters, are there any questions on that or what your options are between those two?
I have a question. If we were to hold it virtually, like we did last year, do we need to actually have a physical location for people to attend the informational meeting?
No, it can be completely virtual.
It can be completely virtual. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how others feel. I feel like it went really smoothly the last year, having to do it that way. I mean, it's not ideal, obviously. Much rather have people in the room to answer any questions, which they can still do virtually, but I'm okay with it. How do others feel?
I would agree. My ideal choice would be to be in person, but considering the state of our community at this point, and how well it went last year, it's under similar circumstances, I'm completely in support of doing the Australian ballot with the informational meeting. It just makes sense.
I'm good with that too.
How about you, Sarah?
Same.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. Okay. So I would entertain a motion to.
Before you make that motion, you do need a motion that's specific since the governor hasn't signed it yet. So I think what we can do is we can actually, we can come back to that at the end of the meeting and we'll hit all 5 motions that we need at once, if that's all right. Okay, so let me, instead of frantically searching for that, I will switch back to, are we back on the warning? Okay. So the articles that will be voted are to elect a moderator, clerk, and treasurer, as we've done in the past. The 2 board seats that are up, 1 for each town. Then there's the money article, Article 5, which is the one giving you authority to spend X number of dollars, and then our prediction on what that budget will mean in terms of spending per pupil. And we'll get into that when we start talking about the details of the budget. Article 6 is an article that some parts of statute say that you need to ask every year for permission to borrow, and so we put that in there. And then there are other parts of statute that suggest you don't need this permission, that you can borrow money if you need to, but the lawyers have advised us to leave it on the warning, and so we just ask for this every year. The last article, Article 7, is one that you had on your warning last year, and I just wanted to talk about it a little bit tonight because both NMV and ERU approach this differently. And it's around the use of the reserve fund. So it's the money that's left over 2 years prior that you can either use to buy down tax rates or you can ask the voters for permission to put it away in a capital reserve fund or make some other use for it. Last year, you asked the district voters to withhold $500,000, and we put that into a capital reserve fund, and we put the rest into buying down the tax rates. Last year, you also had this article, which is the same idea, but it's looking a year forward. So instead of saying to your voters, we had this much money left over last year, can we use it this way? What you're saying is, if we have money left over next year, do you give us the authority to determine how much is going to be capital reserve and how much will go back to the tax rate? So again, you put this on your warning last year. The voters did approve it. You are not in a position to put any money away in a capital reserve fund, which we'll go into later. So it's not something you're going to exercise. But if you so choose, we could leave this article on again. And then when we get to the end of FY22, if this passes, you as the board will determine how much goes into capital reserve. And if we take this off, what it means is that in town meeting 2023, we will go to the voters and say, hey, we have this much money left over. Can we use X of it for this purpose? NMV, you did this last year. NMV chose not to last year. They wanted to go forward with a specific dollar amount, and they're likely to do it again this year. They're going to warn their budget tomorrow night with any luck. So any thoughts or questions on that?
How did NFB choose a dollar amount if they don't know what it's going to be?
Because they're choosing the dollar amount from the year prior. So in the FY23 budget that we're discussing now, it's the money that was left over as of June of 2021. So what you're asking for is saying, whatever money's left over in 6 months, can we use it the way we want to? And obviously that would go to a board vote, once we had the auditors telling us what the dollar amount was.
But Morgan, not to sound dense, but just to make sure I'm following, we're asking for the previous year plus the additional 6 months.
You, in this case, would be asking for next year's money, the authority to spend next year's money as you wanted to. You got it for this current year. You just didn't have any money left over this current year. The way that NMV does it is that they are going to the voters in 2 months and saying, there's this much left over in 2021. Can we use X dollars in 2023? Next year, they will say there's this much left over in 2022. Can we use this much in 2024? If this article were to be warned and passed, you wouldn't be asking the voters that next year because you would already have that authority. So the advantage is it gives you a little bit more control over how that use of fund balance affects your tax rate. The disadvantage is that you're taking some authority away from your voters, and that you're asking them to give you that permission in advance.
It feels like potentially, though we may be taking some of that away, the intent would be potentially to benefit them in the long run.
Yes, it's always still their money. It's whether they're buying down taxes in the short term or putting it away for use in the long term. Exactly.
Or a combination, correct? I'm comfortable moving forward with what we did last year. I feel like that makes sense.
You're muted, Polly.
Oh, no, I'm just talking to myself. Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. I think any information that we push out prior to, particularly at the informational meeting, we can say, it's projected that there may not be funds, but in the event that there would be, we're asking for this authority. So I don't see a problem with it. And the worst they can say is no. right?
Right. And if they do say no, it doesn't mean you can't ask them for a specific dollar amount the next year. You do still get to go back and do that once you know how much money's left over. Okay, I will leave that article in there, and I will make the adjustments to that warning for it to be all virtual. And we will get to those two motions probably towards the end of the meeting. The next document that I'm going to share with you is the budget recap. And this is something that was shared in your packet in a slightly different dollar amount. Basically, the only changes I've added about 35,000, that exactly 35,000 to the overall budget to cover the cost of your membership in the Vermont Virtual Learning Collaborative. And that is the entity that is providing your students and tuition students with some online coursework. And you've heard Beth and Joseph talk in the past about these tuition students that we get from places like Tunbridge and Rutland Town, who are now attending Richford High School, but attending virtually through these VTVLC classes. So overall, it's definitely a net gain on the district. But I think because we have moved that program from being housed in Enosburg to housed in Richford, in that earlier draft of the budget, I just missed moving that amount over. So that's the only change from the version in your packet, and what you see up here on the screen will be updated. I'm going to walk through the expense side pretty quickly, and we can do a deep dive later if you want to. But the expense side is pretty, it's a pretty minor increase. So I think the real issue is the revenue piece that's going on. And so I'm going to try to move between screens. Just let me know if you're still able to see the budget with all the red lines.
Yes.
It's up there, perfect. Okay, so this yellow column here is your FY23 proposed. It starts out with your pre-kindergarten section. Increases here are largely around better accounting for your paraeducators who are split between pre-K and K, getting a more accurate picture on that. You will see throughout that the special ed direct instruction lines have dropped and the regular ed instruction lines have increased. And a big part of that is around Act 173 and how we're trying to predict where that's going to end for July 1. And I will go into that a little bit later, but that's the act that they've been delaying implementing for a while, and really is reconfiguring how we address special ed needs and how we pay for special ed costs. So in your elementary section, again, you'll see a big decrease in special ed direct instruction, offset by a big increase here in direct instruction. If you're paying close attention, you may notice that there was a healthy decrease in student support. This has to do with some Medicaid grant money that we receive at the SU and subgrant to the districts. We've always counted it as revenue in the past because before we were on this statewide system, we could do things that made our lives easier in terms of bookkeeping, but that the state didn't necessarily want to see. Now, instead of doing that, we actually have to pull some of your guidance counselors out and split up their salary and apply them specifically to this grant. So the revenue's gone away, but the expenses in the student support lines in both elementary and secondary have also decreased. Bunch of other changes in here. They're largely catching up with prior year's budget. There's not a huge change in terms of the programmatics that this budget is proposing. Similar story in the secondary budget. See a big increase in regular ed direct instruction, big decrease in special ed direct instruction, and then some tweaks. here and there throughout. Page 2 is Cold Hollow. Decrease here is largely around.
Are you moving your screen? Yeah, you're not moving your screen. Are you frozen? Did you freeze it?
Let me try to go back. How is that?
We could see it just, oh yeah. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. So this is the Cold Hollow section of the budget. A little bit of decrease in salary. That's primarily due to more accurately parting out some salaries to the high schools for a shared staff member. If we go down to the district-wide section, this district-wide direct instruction is largely made up of tuition payments, the lion's share, which is going from Enosburg, Richford to Cold Hollow. I've talked to the Enosburg board about this in the past. It's kind of a bookkeeping nightmare because we are one district, but because of this, the way the state tracks vocational ed, they want to see Enosburg High School and Richford High School paying Cold Hollow tuition for those kids, and then Cold Hollow paying revenue back to the high schools for those kids. We tipped in my business manager draft, which I sent you, a pretty big increase in one of the supervisory union assessments. This would include food service and the superintendent's office. The second one is transportation here, a big increase there, which the SU board has heard, and I can talk about that if you folks want to hear it. And then a pretty dramatic decrease in terms of special ed, in terms of that assessment. And so here, I'll pause and I'll ask Lynn to help me on this, but I'll talk a little bit about the impacts of Act 173. And I'll start to set the table by saying that the bill is scheduled to go into effect July 1, at least for the funding piece of it. So for the year that we're budgeting right now. There is a group of people who are lobbying to have that implementation delayed. We've heard recently that there's a group that's lobbying not to have it delayed. And so this is a fight brewing in the legislature, and it's unlikely that we'll have any real certainty until they've left the building in May. We are going forward with this budget, assuming that nothing changes in terms of statute and Act 173 is implemented. And what that means for your budget is that instead of the reimbursement model where we would get a block grant and cover some of our special ed money off the top, and then when principal hires a $20,000 paraeducator, we would know that roughly 10,000 of it came out of the local budget, and then we would get 10,000 back from the state for that, for their share of the special ed cost. Act 173 does away with that and is basically replacing it completely with a block grant. So here's a batch of money for special ed. You need to spend at least this much, but if you spend more than that, anything you spend over that is going to be a local expense. And there's some minor exceptions to that, but that's basically the gist. Because of the way that that formula is projected, we, like most districts in the state, are anticipating this year to be a pretty healthy decline in terms of revenue. My gut tells me that once we get through this 3-year transition, overall, we'll have a lot more special ed revenue than we've had access to in the past, but it's going to be a little bit bumpy whenever the transition happens until we get there. That this year is compounded by what I am hoping is an error in their calculation for how they are accounting for Sheldon. Basically, they're kind of hurting us in both directions. One, saying we historically haven't spent that money for them because it was in another SU. But now we have to divide what we spent by the kids who we are educating now. And so when they look at our historical spending, it looks significantly lower than it should be if either they gave us the Sheldon money or they didn't give us the Sheldon kids. And so I've raised that with the AOE. I think at the SU level, it could be, $500,000 more, which would mean your assessment would drop, maybe another 300,000 over what we've projected here. But as of the start of your meeting, I haven't gotten anyone to give me a number and an acknowledgement that that's what they're going to do. So we're moving forward with a pretty conservative estimate and moving forward assuming that Act 173 is going to be law. So Lynn, I don't know if you want to jump in on that, clarify anything.
I just think that you did a great job. I think that just know we're going into this and making the best, most conservative decisions, like Morgan said, based on what we know right now. And the footing under us, much like how we're living with COVID, the footing under us is a little uncertain right now. So there are a lot of gears connected to Act 173. So not only is it that census block, there's also an impact on pupil weights, and there's also impact in terms of making some changes in terms of special ed rules that are going to significantly impact us. So there are a lot of scenarios that we can play out, but not knowing if the gears are all going to turn together at the same time, or if one gear is going to turn this year and another gear is going to turn next year. The third gear, we don't know when that's going to turn. So we're just going with what the law says right now in the moment, because we have to warn our budgets very soon. And we don't really feel like it would be responsible to do anything other than that in this moment.
Any questions from the board on that?
So the decline in state revenue, that's tied with that special ed funding you're talking about.
Yes, so if we go to this revenue section, which is your green section, this 174 is that Medicaid reimbursement money that I talked to that really needs to be classified as a grant. And what I did was I reduced your guidance counselor lines by that amount. So it was a net wash. This 772 figure is really the local revenue that you're losing out on. So because all of the block grant money is going to the SU, there will be no district level revenue coming in. In the past, that 772 might have meant you spent $1 million and change on special ed costs at the local level. Now there's no special ed costs at the local level. And so this will feed into the larger discussion that we've tipped, I think, with all three boards about how we treat paraeducators in our system, because historically they have been either split special ed and regular ed or 100% special ed, and there's no local revenue tied to them any longer. So we can move them to the SU, move some of them to the SU, leave them at the local district and absorb all the revenue at the SU and reduce our assessment to you, and there are pros and cons of each of those, and we need more information and more discussion with your leaders before we can make that call. So this 772 is a big scary number. It's really largely offset by the fact that we're reducing your special ed assessment by 426. And again, if Act 173 is implemented on July 1, and my hope is correct on that calculation formula, we might be in a position where the SU just doesn't send you all the assessments that year, and this, if we had known, would look a lot closer to that 772 figure as a complete offset.
So that, am I jumping ahead if I go to that projected tax rate line?
You are not quite, but let me say one more thing on that.
Okay.
So on the revenue, we talked about the fund balance and use of fund balance, and that's really this other revenue line. So this 507 is the current year projection of the money that was left over in FY20. So you asked your voters to put $500,000 into capital reserve and 507,000 into buying the tax rate down. We don't have the audit yet, but I am thinking that this is the number of money we had left over at the end of FY21. So you can give all your principals a big pat on the back. They spent within like 0.2% of the money that they brought in last year. So we really nailed it in terms of our projection. The problem is, and this is always the problem with the way that we use fund balances in Vermont, is that because they did so well and were so accurate, this year we saw a decline in the use of fund balance by almost $500,000. And that almost $500,000 is probably 4 or 5 cents on the tax rate. And so one of the reasons to keep control of the use of fund balance is that if you're always running between, say, $500,000 and $1 million on money left over, $250,000 and $1 million on money left over, you can use that capital reserve money to not only to put money away in the good years, but also to keep that tax rate from bopping up and down each year. You didn't end up with enough money at the end of this year to have any impact on that. But hopefully we won't overspend what we take in next year. And when we're sitting around the table 12 months from now, we'll be doing the happy dance about what's going on in this line.
So this is that every year when we build a budget, Morgan talks through what are we going to put away, what are we going to give back, and this would be a good demonstration of just impact. And it wasn't the wrong thing to do last year, but before you even start to build your budget, we're essentially starting $477,000 in the hole as we're building forward for next year, just because of that loss of revenue. And again, it wasn't the wrong thing to do. It's just the circumstance. So that's the impact we're having to address this year.
And if you had lost that vote last year of the 500,000 in the capital reserve fund, you would, one, you wouldn't have any money in your capital reserve fund, and two, this would, instead of being a 4 to 5 cent increase, it would be a 9 cent increase, because this number would have been $1,000,007, and this number would have been 977. So tax rates, and can't ever remember when people jumped on the board or who might be out there watching. So I'll kind of walk through the formula again. This 20 million is the amount of money you're asking the voters for permission to spend. This 4.5 million is our best estimate on how much money we're going to take in locally. So before we need to ask money from the state in terms of that ed fund money. This 4.5 million, the lion's share is tuition payments from other districts, and then state revenue, much of which is tied to the tech center. And then there's money we get from the feds for the ROTC program, and then some smaller amounts trickled in here and there. So these two numbers, the difference is your ed spending, and so that's the amount of money we need from the state. This is the section of the tax rate that you, the board, and you, the voters, control. You can tell me 20 million is too high, we're going to warrant something smaller, or you can tell me we want to add some programs and we're going to make that 20 million go up. You can tell me, I don't think we're going to get as many tuition kids next year, so I want you to cut the tuition revenue and this number goes down. Or you can say, we want you to roll the dice on getting that special ed money for Sheldon, and we want you to increase that number. Either of those things will drive your ed spending figure. The second part of the formula is your equalized pupils. This is still version 1 of equalized pupils from the state. We were tipped that we were going to get version 2 last week, but we haven't seen it yet. My guess is it's going to drift down a little bit. And if the equalized people number goes down, taxes go up. So it may tweak a little bit in the wrong direction. But we don't know if the number is going to go down or up. The reason that the state is not confident in that number is that not all of the districts felt like they had accurate numbers into them when they did the first run. So that's number 2 on the tax rate. Dividing equalized pupils into your ed spending gives you the per pupil education spending, which is the number that we use to compare against districts across the state. I can switch. Can you see the red and green chart now?
Yes.
So this is the thing that we put in the town book, and it goes out in the mailer showing the state average, the highs and the lows, and then where our towns are in terms of ed spending per pupil. And this is always a year behind because that's the data that we get. So that's the 16,774. The dollar yield is the part of the formula that the legislature controls. I had sent you out the number from the December 1st letter, which is the tax commissioner sort of making a guess where they think that the yield is going to end up. The tax commissioner put out a 13,846 number and then put a long description below that, basically saying that he's required by statute to put up that high number, which would have plummeted tax rates, but saying he thinks that the number is going to come in at 12,937. The reason for that is that the ed fund is very healthy this year, and many in the administration and legislature are planning on spending that in other ways. And so they're basically going to kind of split that largesse and figure that bringing the yield in $2,000 higher is kind of going to be enough tax relief. We won't know that number until May, but we have to warn something going forward. And I'm pretty sure that won't be the final number, but everybody in the state is using it as far as I know right now, and it should be fairly close. So dividing the dollar yield into per pupil ed spending gives you your equalized residential school tax rate. And this is the tax rate that you use to compare to other districts prior to applying the CLA, which is different for every town. So that number is 1296 or 129.66 or an 8-cent drop, which in a normal year is, ticker tape parade. We're loving going into this with an 8-cent drop. As I also sent you out by email in December, CLAs for all 6 of our towns have dropped pretty significantly, and that was not unexpected given the way property sales are going. But you'll see that in Enosburg and in Richford both, that's eating up that property tax drop, so that if you were to warn this budget today, Enosburg would see a tax rate increase of just about 0.5 cent, and Richford would see a tax rate increase of just over 1.50 cents.
Morgan, can you go back to, well, no, you don't have to go back to the warning, but the warning said that our budget was up 10-point-something% from last year's number.
So that's this 16,774 number.
Right.
The number that you have to put on the warning. So it'll say, if you want
Right.
16,774, a 10.56% increase over the prior year.
10%,
And again,
right.
that's largely because of this this decline in revenue. Your actual expense budget as it's presented right now is up less than 1%. But we don't get to choose how the warning is written.
Right, I know. I wish we could put some kind of caveat that explains that, but I guess that's the whole point of our informational meeting, I guess.
To the extent that, that people tune into that.
You can put it in your information packets, though. You can put it in your letter.
Yeah. So I can do a slow walk through the budget. Again, it's a 1% increase, and we're not really adding much of anything. In terms of staffing, budget to budget, it's up a little bit over 4 FTEs. I think much of that are paraeducators in the programs that Michelle Taberge has going at Monteith House and at Richford Elementary. They needed a home somewhere, and we don't pay paraeducators out of the SU. So at the moment, they're living in your budget, depending on what happens with Act 173 and those discussions, they may get pulled out of here. And if you look in the budget detail, I've kept them in a special ed compartment, even though we don't have special ed anymore at the local level, just so you could kind of see that impact. And then we're moving one guidance counselor out of grant money into the local budget. And that's really it in terms of staffing year to year. I think the big picture is the revenue. So the drop in the special ed revenue and also the loss of that fund balance.
Unless, I don't know how others feel, I don't feel like I need to walk through. I thought that captured it. Mort, Sarah, Amy, how do you feel?
Yeah, not for that little of a change. I'm be good with that.
Yep.
I'm good with it.
Same. Yes, me too.
Morgan, just a like logistical, you'll probably laugh when I ask the question, like, will there ever be a time in which those numbers released by the state will be while we're building our budget, since they directly impact her? But I mean, like, seems like a silly, like a simple question, but it's just a little bit mind-blowing that our systems would be set up in a way that doesn't allow us to accurately project a budget, like throwing darts at the wall on some level.
So there was a time that I think I can remember where we had this information more solid earlier in the year. It's been at least 3 years since we've really warned a budget with any confidence that we knew that equalized pupils or the yield was going to end where it ends. Your CLA is set. This year, because of Act 173, it's significantly worse in terms of predicting revenue. I talked a little bit about the increase in the transportation assessment as well. Usually by December, we know how much transportation aid we're going to get next year. We haven't even seen a draft of those numbers yet. So the SU level just kind of making a guess and saying, I hope we get this much, and then we need this much from the districts. So if we look at that, transportation figure of 322, that could be 50,000 higher, it could be 50,000 lower. And we at the SU level are kind of absorbing that risk, although we know that if we're in a world of hurt, we may have to go back to the districts and say, we need more money to keep paying the bills, and so you're going to have to cut. Or if we're more conservative than where reality ends, we might, as we've in years past, say, we're just not billing you the last month of assessment because where revenue's coming in, we just don't need it, and you guys need it more. But it feels like in the past where there's maybe been one variable that we didn't have a good handle on, this year it's everything. It's special ed, it's transportation, it's food service is a big mystery. And then we don't have, confidence in the equalized pupil numbers. So there's a lot of changes.
Okay, you got anything else, Morgan, or?
I will try to go back to
those motions.
Some of those things in your packet. These are the pie charts that you've seen in your books before. If there are any comments that people want to make to me offline before we finalize them, that's fine. Those will go in the town books. This, as I tipped before, is the mailer that we'll send out. So one side is that statewide spending average chart, and the other side will update it when the meetings are settled, but you'll have your proposed tax rate and NMV's proposed tax rate there. And that's what we mail out to everyone with a mailing address in one of your 6 towns. And then we hit a few other mailing routes that we know maybe start in other towns, but come into one of ours.
When do those go out? When are you gonna finalize?
As soon as we can get them out, once both boards have finalized.
Okay. I just have to find out where voting will be too.
Right. Your SU budget is in there as well. That goes in the back of the book. I'm not sure that that's compelling reading for many people pulling through the town books, but we do put it in there. I did also include the first draft of my business manager report in your packet. If there's anything you would like me to point to that I haven't, feel free to shoot me a message on that. I will hopefully have that finalized by the end of the week.
Last year, did we end up doing a video? I always appreciate, Morgan, when you walk through how we get to that tax rate. And I know we had talked about it, but I feel like it was one of those like last ditch efforts. But I wonder about having some kind of video that people can just click on our either our website or on social media. Just that walkthrough, like here are the numbers we control, here are the numbers we have no control over, here are how they impact those things, here's where we can make shifts, just so people at their leisure, because I know those meetings tend to have pretty low attendance. But I love to be able to even have something to reference to people when someone comes to us and make some flippant comment, that we can direct them into a place that really explains it much better than we may be able to.
And so the great thing about that is that I help write it with Lynn and others in the office, but we get one of you guys to do the video, and Polly did it last year, I believe.
Yeah. I was actually just asking him, Morgan, I don't know if that's like the chair thing to do. So I was going to reach out to Kevin and see if he wanted to do that.
It feels like a chair thing, especially if the chair's not here.
I thought so.
Definitely.
But
Yep.
I also said that if that didn't happen, that I'd be willing to make another video to send out. Cause yeah, I feel like people can watch them when they have a chance. I think it's helpful.
You can be a social media star on our Facebook page, Polly.
It's what I aspire to be.
I believe they call it an influencer.
So trendy. Okay. So Morgan, do you have anything else?
It's really up to you guys. If you want to talk anything else budget or warning, if you're comfortable moving this budget forward, I've got those motions that I can give you.
Okay. How do you folks feel? I feel like we kept that tax rate super almost level funded, even given the ebb and flow of that whole thing. So I feel pretty good about it, but I don't know how the rest of you feel, if you're okay with it.
Yeah, I'm on
Let's
board.
move forward.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Yeah, I think that those tax rates are nice and low. I like it. Okay.
And I will say there's a very small chance that we'll get some useful information in the next few days. And if it is going to dramatically change how the warning will read and we have time, I can reach out to you or to Kevin about doing a quickie rewarn meeting. We wouldn't want to get into the programmatics of the budget, but we could do that. And then if we do get good information or better information that impacts the revenue, we can go forward to the voters with something, even though the motion says X dollar of per pupil spending and it's this much of an increase. If we know going into town meeting day that it's going to be a lot less than that, we can have handouts and some PR around that.
Okay. So what motions do you want to bring to us?
So the first motion would be to adopt the provisions of S 172 an act relating to authorizing alternative procedures for 2022 annual municipal meetings in response to COVID-19 on the condition it is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And I will send your note taker the text of that.
Okay, perfect. Because that is a very wordy sentence for, do we want to hold our informational meeting remotely and vote Australian ballot like we did last year? So I would entertain a motion if anybody or comment.
Motion.
Amy made the motion. I'll take a roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so moved.
Thank you. Our next motion is to warn an FY23 Enosburg Richford Unified Union School District budget of $20,174,531.
20,000.
20 million.
That's what I thought.
530.
It would have been a little short.
A little. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt this presented budget.
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made the motion. I'll take a roll. Amy?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so moved.
We have two announced tuition rates. The first would be three, actually. The first would be a motion to announce an FY23 elementary tuition rate of $14,800.
Do I have a motion to accept that tuition rate?
I'll make the motion to accept.
Okay, Amy has made the motion, so I'll take a roll. Amy?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so moved.
And then a motion to announce an FY23 secondary tuition rate of $18,100. And this is the rate that you charge to NMV and the few other school districts that are tuitioning kids to year 2 high schools.
So I entertain a motion to adopt that.
I'll make the motion.
Mort has made a motion. Mort, roll.
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so moved.
Can you say that number one more time?
18,100.
Okay.
And then a motion to announce an FY23 vocational tuition rate of 14,300.
I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Sarah made the motion. Sarah, roll.
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so moved.
And then my last one is a motion to approve and authorize the chair to sign away from the table the Enosburg Richford Unified Union School District 2022 annual meeting warning.
So that's Kevin, the chair.
Yep.
Okay. So do I have a motion to give Kevin the authority to sign that warning?
Make a motion, mostly just to make him do something. He's not here.
Okay. You're ribbing him. So Amy made the motion. I'll take a vote. Amy?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so moved.
And unless you have any questions, I think that's enough from me tonight.
Okay.
I have 20 million reasons you don't want to hear from me again for a while.
20 million reasons. Okay. Now we have Lynn. Lynn, is it?
Sorry, I have too many screens open. All right. So I'll start with a hiring update. I think that you do have a couple to approve. So you have a few paraeducators, Philip Cook, a paraeducator at the Monteith House, Deanna McAllister, also a paraeducator, Bev Mayat has moved back to being a paraeducator, though that's informational. I would like the board to approve hiring for Denise LaValle, who is working as an SU early childhood special educator, and Melinda Jerry, who we'd like to hire as an SU math interventionist at Richford Junior Senior High School.
I thought we did the Denise LaValle already. No?
I think that,
We don't need approval from the
Wait,
Richford
wait, wait,
Enosburg
wait.
board
I'm
for
on the wrong.
Yeah, I was
board.
gonna say, I thought that was SU, yeah.
It's an error. My brain wasn't kicking on it. So that should be informational, not
Yeah.
approval, because she's working at Richford. But that should be on the SU one. Apologies for that. For both of those are just informational. Correct, Beth? You're funding the interventionists through grants as well.
That's correct.
Okay. So you have some resignations. These are informational. Bev Mayat, custodian. Will Roberts, SU math interventionist. I don't need an action on that. Christina Stryker, paraeducator. You still have some open positions. You're looking at Enosburg Elementary for a paraeducator, behavior technician, bus monitor, evening custodian. Enosburg High School, a paraeducator, athletic trainer, evening custodian, a PE teacher for 22-23, health teacher 22-23, and high school principal for 22-23. And I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. At Richford Elementary, they're looking for a paraeducator, a skilled behavior technician, a certified tutor, and a teacher interventionist. And at Richford Junior Senior High School, they're looking for a behavior technician and a long-term middle school English sub. There was a salary advancement report that was attached to your board report. Does anyone have any questions under personnel? Okay. So don't have anything under student. There is typically, this is the time of the year where we address the reduction in force notice. So we generally notify the teachers union that we may need to contemplate a reduction in force. It's not indicating that there's a decision to lay off any members of the workforce. It is a required notice, however, that the board may choose to consider reductions if there is something that happens and the budget is not approved. This is something that the board generally does every year, and it generates a letter from myself to the union, and they always know that it's coming. So the potential motion language would be that the board makes a motion to direct the superintendent to send a letter to the Cold Hollow Education Association president, notifying him that the board may contemplate a reduction in force.
Do I have a motion? Or conversation or questions?
Made the motion.
Thanks, Mort. Mort made the motion. I'll take roll. Mort,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and I am an aye. So moved.
Just want to note that is a formality that I'm going to ask you to do every February. The reality is our hiring situation is we are very unlikely to have to let anyone go. But we will continue to just make sure that we follow that process.
Right.
So next up is one of my least favorite topics of the year, because it gets us into, when we start to dig in, it always seems to tangle us a little bit, but we need to talk about high school choice limits. So what I did in your board notes was I pulled out the language. You have to figure out how many students you're going to allow in and how many students you're going to allow out. And I gave you the decisions that you made last year. So you have to set an annual limit for the number of students that you allow to transfer out of each high school. So those are resident students, Enosburg students out of Enosburg, and Richford students out of Richford. The minimum limit is not fewer than 5% of the resident students, or 10, whichever is less. The maximum limit is not more than 10% of resident students, or 40, whichever is less. In January of 21, you chose to set an annual limit of 7 students transferring out of each high school annually. So the board will need to make a decision and a motion on what your choice limit going to be for trans.
Have we, since those decisions were made, have we hit those caps at all?
I do not believe we have hit that cap.
Yeah. So I feel comfortable keeping with that same decision because it hasn't been flexed. Seems like it's more than enough. How do other feels?
I'm
I'd
good with
agree.
it.
If we're not bumping up against, it hasn't been an issue.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I'd entertain a motion.
I'll
Make the motion.
Okay.
Tag, you're it.
So Sarah made the motion, and I'll take a roll. Amy,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Mort.
Can I just get a clear
Aye.
motion for my notes?
Yes, Sarah. Oh, the motion. The
So-
motion is to keep the previous language that was decided. Can we do that? And
How
then
about
Lynn will
this?
send you the language. Yeah.
I can send you the language.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I was an aye and so moved on that.
And then the next part is you need to determine your annual limit for the number of students who will be allowed to transfer into each high school. And remember, this is in for students who do not live in a choice town. So you're going to take them in. You're not going to get any tuition money for them, and you're not going to count those kids in your school. So the board gets more flexibility about how you determine that capacity at your local level. Last January, we talked about this, and you chose to set an annual limit of 5 students in each high school for a max of 20 at any time. So not more than 5 per year.
Five per year for each school.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I'm gonna kind of piggyback on Polly's previous question. What has our experience been with these numbers in the past year?
So
Or past
as
couple
you're
years?
asking these questions, I wish I had the foresight to speak with the registrars at the 2 high schools. So I'm wondering if Joseph or Beth has any accurate data regarding that. I'm putting them on the spot too.
I think
Yeah,
the
that's-
numbers are fine, probably.
Yeah, I
I
think the
don't-
numbers are fine too. I don't have data in front of me, but I don't feel that there's been any excess beyond what we've talked about.
Same.
Yeah, particularly if the building principals feel like it's a reasonable number, I'm on board.
Okay, was that a motion, Amy?
Sure was. I'll make that
Okay.
motion.
Okay, so Amy made the motion. I'll take a roll. Amy,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Mort,
Aye.
and I am an aye. So moved.
Okay. And now I think I'll shift into COVID updates. I think I'm going to try to be as brief as possible because if I go too far, we really could be talking a long time, and I'm not going to try to do that to you tonight. So I think I've been keeping you pretty updated. I think I've been keeping the community pretty updated. The last week has been probably the most intense of the pandemic. The case counts are really high in Vermont in general, and we're seeing significant number of cases in FNESU schools. Schools are around the state in the same place. We're seeing spikes in cases, and we're seeing staffing shortages. That was further complicated last week over the break with some unexpected guidance changes, and then more guidance changes. And like I talked about earlier, just when we thought well, here's what we think the guidance says, let's try to interpret it for our community. The second we got communication out last week, the guidance would change again. So we're feeling like there still isn't complete stability with exactly what that language is going to look like. We're waiting for some information that's going to come in writing from the agency. I think that one of the things that happened last week is there was some information sent to superintendents. We've definitely given the secretary some feedback and a request that, listen, if there are going to be major policy changes, if there's a way for you to give us even a little bit of a heads up as system leaders, that will help us to be able to communicate more effectively with our community members and our stakeholders. And so I think Secretary French made that attempt on Friday. We didn't have a lot of details, but we got what everyone kind of saw in the press. I think it didn't really work for its intended purpose because it was almost simultaneously leaked to the press. So the press took it and interpreted it, and then social media interpreted it some more. And then the NEA interpreted it. So it just kind of was a compounding effect over the weekend. And I think that the narrative is that, we're abandoning contact tracing and we're not going to be testing. The reality is contact tracing as we've defined it isn't working right now because the process is too long and this variant is working differently than the original COVID variant. So it's not efficient and it's not sustainable. So we're going to be not doing exactly that anymore. Right now, the guidance that I understand is there'll still be some contact with families, but broader contact. Like we've had cases in this group of classrooms, or there's someone that your child may have been exposed to someone in the school that had COVID. And instead of it being, you need to go get a PCR test, they're finding that the PCR tests are taking way too long. And it's too late by the time you get your information to really impact spread. So it's more of a shift to the rapid antigen test, and it's more of a shift to the making them available for families to do at home rather than expecting schools to continue to hold all of the public health testing, not all of it, but a lot of public health testing within the school's realm of responsibility. So we're starting to see moves towards an endemic shift in how we're responding to the situation we're in. So I think that we've got some growing pains coming in the next few weeks, and I'm going to carefully tread out there with communication as it comes to us, but I'm super reluctant right now to get ahead of communication before I see things in writing, because what's already out there can't be operationalized yet because there are no tools or resources for us to put it into operation. So we don't have the tests that they're talking about, and we're going to do the best we can and continue on as best as we can with the testing protocols that we have in place and with the contact tracing as best we can with what we have in place. So look for more information as we get greater clarity, but I'm just not going to step into the world of trying to interpret without clarity because it hasn't served me well in the last 10 days. Any questions about that COVID reality that we're all in?
I just have to say that I do appreciate, Lynn, that your perspective is to kind of wait until you have that information, which is helpful. I think there's other districts who have made really quick jumps, likely to try to make things happen for people and make people feel like they're in the moment responding. But I appreciate the thoughtfulness of like making the right choice. And I feel like sometimes by the time the written response comes out, there's already been shifts, so you're not having. So I appreciate it. I just want to make sure you knew that.
Yeah, thank you. To be honest with you, Amy, we don't have the. What people might not understand is you can't just say, I'm going to do that part now, but not these parts, because they're interconnected. So you can't say, we're not going to contact trace in the same way, but we're still going to run tests to stay, because they're totally connected and dependent on one another. So and I don't feel like we can say we're going to make this shift now because we just don't have the guidance on how to implement what they're asking us to do, nor do we have the tools yet, the resources. So we'll do it as quickly as we can. We know many people are eager, but we can't get ahead of it because it's squishy right now. Anybody else? Okay. Also included in your board packet is just information about the legislative session. So it began on January 4th. You've already heard from Morgan some of the things that they've been taking up, and one is about how to handle your annual meeting. I do also think that there is a bill right behind this bill that is going to allow the board to have some flexibility. It's not approved yet, but allow boards to have flexibilities to shift meetings to virtual meetings without being forced to have in-person locations while we get through this surge. So once that happens, I'll communicate with boards if that shift is made. There is certainly a great concern in the legislature about how we're responding to COVID and what resources and ideas do they need to think about in terms of supporting schools. So there's a lot of work happening right now trying for different committees to seek to understand what's going on. One of the things I was supposed to testify today in Senate Education about mental health in schools. And honestly, that was the only thing I didn't get to talk about today because it ended up being I testified about COVID instead and about the reality that we're in right now. So my advocacy will be to push for those systems that support us in education to get greater support in this legislative session, because we need our partners in mental health and we need our partners in the Department of Children and Families to have enough staff and to have adequate funding and resources to be able to support us. And we need those specialized programs that kids need when their needs exceed what we're able to manage in schools. And that's what we're seeing right now. We need opportunities for those students and those families to access resources above what we can offer within the public school. So that's missing. And I hope that that's one of the things the legislators attend to. So I'll continue to try to advocate for some of those shifts. I gave you all in your notes legislator contact information and committee assignments. And that's so that if something is coming up and you want to send a quick email out to someone in the legislature, you have easy access to be able to do that. I just will tip you, I know, Sarah, you're relatively new to the board. The VSBA is really good about sending out legislative updates, and I would encourage you to really take a look at those. They're well done, understandable, and they really summarize it down they synthesize it into really manageable document. You got those throughout the legislative session, and they also sometimes have you could jump on webinars or other training opportunities. So watch for those. You should get those in your email. The last thing I have is about the EFHS principal search process. And I wonder if we should do that part after the principal reports. Polly, I didn't think about this when you're doing your prioritization, but I am going to want to bring you into executive to finalize the board interview questions. It's not something I would want to do in open meeting. And I don't want the principals to have to hang out if they don't have to.
Okay, so you want to do that after the principals? Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep, totally fine. We can move that. Okay. And do you have anything else before we move into the principals?
I do not.
Okay. Well done, Lynn. That was like, boom.
I tried.
That was good. So now let's move into let me see, the first on my agenda is Kelly. Kelly, you're up. Is there anything you'd like to add other than what's in your report?
No, everything is informational.
Okay. Beth.
Everything's informational.
Great. Let's see, Jen.
All informational.
Great. Rachel.
All informational.
Perfect. And Joseph.
Like everyone else, it's all informational.
Okay. And Nate.
Yeah, no, mine's not. So I'm sorry. So I'll try to go fast though. I don't want to keep you guys late. If you looked in my report, you saw a PowerPoint, and I don't think I need to necessarily share it with you, but I do want to go over some of the highlights of future programming. As you know, we're gonna continue based on numbers. We're gonna continue the digital media program. So we're gonna just kind of be looking to shift potentially. That's still a digital focus, but be looking to hire someone that might be able to incorporate some more web page design, more creative design, more design type problem solving, coding, videography, and stuff like that. So it's gonna be following some of the other programs in the state, but also looking at what we can do to meet that labor market in and around the state. So we don't have a ton of that in our area, but that's something that the state is still saying there's a need for that, especially in the coding and web page design and computer science area. The second part of that is the idea of creating that human services teacher pipeline program. And so we've been meeting with the state, and there's still a lot of momentum around supporting a teacher pipeline with the curriculum called Ed Rising, which is a curriculum that is a national curriculum that's helping young people become teachers with a curriculum. So I will be looking to get that grant funded, so it should not affect the budget. It would be a half-time position, but that grant does not come out until April. And so that's a bit of a problem. However, my backup plan is if that does not work, I could shift some staff that I currently have and at least for year one, get that program up and off the ground. There is, in the interest surveys, there was low numbers, but I do believe it's a program that if you get the right person, could definitely get that, when people are seeing kids going to work in the schools as paraeducators, potential teachers, and there's might be some money for tuition reimbursement even for those that want to go into the education field. But counselors, NCSS partnerships, childcare facilities, and there's just a lot of, it's a high demand field right now. So I'm hoping to either one, like I said, get the time grant through Career and Tech Ed, or shift some personnel at least for a half time for 1 year, and then we can readdress. Any questions about that?
Are you asking for the board to approve the addition of Education and Human Services program?
I don't know if I need to, but I might as well. I think that might be, but yeah, so I might as well get just a motion to approve a human services program. I might need that for the application. I don't have that in front of me.
And are we approving, like you said, for 1 year, like a pilot, or are we approving for?
Well, I would say you have to, yeah, I would ask for approval overall, just because I think for the grant purposes, I think it has to be a 3-year, I think it's a 3-year grant cycle. I don't know if I'm tied to that. If we don't have the numbers. Again, anytime that we have gone up to 7 programs, it does hurt a little bit. Sometimes I feel like we're stealing from Peter to pay Paul, but that is, and next year is probably not the best year to do it, although I do want to get it off the ground, because if you look at the school numbers, combined 10th graders, so incoming students for me are only about 90 students next year between Enosburg and Richford. The following year it's 147. So it's a huge, a very small 10th grade class, a very big 9th grade class in the district. So, I would like to have everything in place going forward. I haven't gone down and looked at the numbers at 8th grade across the SU, but I think I'm sure it's somewhere in between. So yes, approval of a human service program would be great.
I know it's a super popular program at Northwest Tech. So yeah, I think that there's like a huge need in the community and in the profession, frankly. So I would support. How do others feel?
I could support it more. There's such a need, and I think just getting interest early, even if it's not a pipeline directly into a position, but even into like higher ed or some combination of either, I think that's a really great investment for our community.
Yeah, so it sounds like Sarah made that motion. So I'm going to take a roll. So Sarah?
Aye.
Mort?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so moved.
Okay, perfect. And then the last thing is just to keep you up to date on the building project. Been meeting with Vern and Morgan recently. The top priority is the ADA compliance, and that is moving forward with doors and elevators. Vern has been a great asset in making sure that those things are being done properly. Phase 1 is complete. We've got the pole barn, the outside classroom at the woodlot, and phase 2 is now the sugar house and site work on that. So Morgan, we're not prepared to ask for money yet because Vern is getting site work estimates and things of that nature. Seth is working on the plans for the sugar house to send to Black River Design, And then phase 3, which is the Cold Hollow Career Center building itself, Vern is really looking at another phased approach. So getting us up to ADA compliance, and then doing a serious look at the systems, heating and electrical. And his thought is over a few years, getting that building up to where it needs to be, try to do it in one big project. And it doesn't make sense. So once I get my first phase 3 project done, we'll be on to another phased project. But Vern's been a huge asset, and I think I'll be working with him again the rest of this month to even hopefully bring you some actual numbers for the site work. I am hoping that I can use some of that gear funds for that site work. So I've got about $70,000 left that I still have to use before September. And I want to use that. We're hoping to be able to use that for site work and construction and sugar house outside of our current building. So that's kind of an update there.
Now, on the news the other night, they basically were talking about the governor really wanting to bring infrastructure money to career centers. What's the landscape on that one? Do we know?
That's been talked about a lot, and we think that if we have our plan in place, where here's what besides the system structures, but building and upgrades, that if we have the plan in place, that we might be in line to jump on those funds.
Great. I like plans. Yeah. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks. That was good.
All right,
and then, so that brings us back to, let's see, Lynn, wanting to go into executive regarding those questions for the principal interviews. So do we need any of the principals around for that? No? So we can cut you loose. So have a good night. Stay warm.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Do you need me to stay on, or can Morgan take minutes?
We don't need you to stay on. I can let you know what happens.
Okay, so just when you go in and when you come out, or is there a motion right now to go into exec?
Well, there'll be a motion, and we also have board business, but I don't think that'll be anything important.
One thing that you'll want to do is to set your informational meeting date, which if you want to do it now, I am thinking February 22nd makes the most sense, because that's the same day of the week as your normal board meeting. And it looks like last year we did it at 7 p.m.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. February 22nd. Anybody opposed? Yeah. So February 22nd at 7. Would we hold our board meeting prior to, or is that that's our board meeting? I know.
Well, that would not be your board meeting. That's kind of a different structure.
Are you asking, Polly, if you want us to warn it for 6:30 so you could do some prep work, or 6:15 in advance of that?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, yeah, whichever.
I think you've done that in the past. You've
Yeah.
sometimes done that and sometimes not.
Yeah. I think if the chair or myself gets with Morgan and kind of does our homework, I think we won't need a whole lot of prep work. That's my sense. So let's just warn it for 7. Let's go with it.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think you'll have any other action coming out of board business unless Lynn knows something.
Okay. So then I would entertain a motion to go into executive at 7:28.
Made the motion.
Mort makes a motion. Roll, Mort.
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
And I am an aye. So okay, are we ready? Oh, and we have no action as per executive session. Okay. Am I ready to go, Morgan? Can I just keep rolling? Okay, so now we have board business, which it looks like Our next regular scheduled meeting is February 8th. SU Board Representative Report. Oh, gosh, I should do this better. Okay, let's see. Let me look at the agenda. It'll like jog my memory here. Okay, so the meeting, what did we have? We had, oh yes, we had Dominic gave us an update for the Director of Technology. He has Tom, he was my former student. Wagner, Thomas Wagner, former student, is working with him, and they are, so he just gave an update about that. They're working really well together and getting a lot done. Particularly, he talked about data collection and how that's going more smoothly. Am I right, Lynn? Did I get that?
Well, he has more time for it.
More time for it. Yeah, exactly.
Thomas is able to take some of the other things off.
Right. Leaps, Heather Moore shared a presentation from some of the work that they're doing. I'm spacing on what exactly. Was it the youth?
Was it the Youth Leadership Project?
Yes, the Youth Leadership Project. And then Gab Alumbra shared with the Virtual Learning Academy and showed us some of their some of the work that they're doing in that program. And then Morgan did budget for the SU. Lynn talked about the Act 173, the special ed law and the weighting study, and just gave us some legislative updates. We did grant Lynn authority to continue with the pandemic decision-making, and then keep the board in the loop regarding decisions that are being made. And then that was, Mary Niles and I worked, so part of board business was a subcommittee created to work on the superintendent job description. Mary Niles and I worked on that. We took the Vermont School Boards Association template and just kind of tweaked it a little bit to fit the needs. So that is going back to the SU board, and then it will be shared with this board potentially, but ultimately it sits with the SU. Am I forgetting anything?
Probably, but you did a better job than I would have at this time of thing.
And yeah, so, and then what else do we have? Any questions about any of that? No? Okay, so then we have future agenda items. Are there any future agenda items you want to see pop up? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. If I don't have any, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Sarah made the motion. Take a roll. Sarah.
Aye.
Mort.
Aye.
And Amy.
Aye.